On TikTok, a teacher posted a video on how to get a student to hand over their mobile phones after they've used them in class. In the United States, we give teachers a wide amount of latitude in how to discipline students. Do you think that we give teachers too much or too little power? A reply to this post said, "Teachers are the first cops kids encounter." Is that an accurate statement? Should teachers discipline kids in a fashion that is reminiscent of real-world consequences in an effort to give them a proper guidance? Should teachers have the ability to call on law enforcement for anything short of physical assault? Yeah, so I'll put this Twitter thread in the chat here, so y'all can take a look at it. But it's pretty simple. This teacher just shows how she handles kids, when they're like supposed to give over their phones, and she does it in a very direct manner that apparently never really fails, according to them and some of the commenters, right? But other teachers, they'll call in the school resource officer if a child is not compliant, which can be a big problem, right? Which could lead to other consequences, like for that kid. So I'm wondering if the way that teachers operate within classrooms makes sense, and should we, and maybe we should rethink it. Maybe we should give them less power, more power, and we'll ask the panelists, starting with Sneaky Debate Man.
I'll preface this with, this is like a incredibly America-centric question. Like, should we call the police on our children? Like, that's fucking insane. Like, no other country has this, where they have like metal detectors and like banning backpacks and like fucking like calling the police and like having you have security guards in your schools. When I first heard that, I thought it was a joke. That's outrageous. That's ridiculous. Like, what's going on in your country? What are you doing over there? That's crazy, right? Like, I don't know what you have, like some like massive cultural problem where like kids are gonna like fight teachers. Jesus Christ! If I went to school and I throw a punch at a teacher, I'd be expelled like that. I'd be fucking out of there, right? I would have trouble getting into school, right? The state, I would be the boon of the state. But this seems to be like something that just happens all the fucking time in America, right? Just kid fights a teacher, a little scandal here, a little scandal there. Maybe I'm tainted by the media because obviously I don't actually have a first-hand experience of going to an American school, but fuck me, it certainly seems a lot worse than English school. Like, as far as the authority of the teachers goes, I think the teachers probably need more authority in these situations. Like, I don't. When I was at school, like the fear of God was in the teachers. Like, fuck me, you don't cross the teachers because you even like the nice teachers you don't cross, right? And it's because if you did, you'd be fucked for it, right? Like I said, you get expelled. You'd be in the fucking like the isolation for like a week or whatever, right? This would have a huge impact on you. And like the fact, like I saw that video. And it's like the woman's like, "Oh, please give me your phone. Get off your phone now." And she tells him 3 times. Fuck me. If I was on my phone in school, I'd be fucking out of the classroom straight away. Like, they would give me 3 chances. That's insane. That's ridiculous that they would allow that. And she said it in such a fucking nice tone. If I was on my phone in class, the teacher would come over, like rip the phone out of my hands and send me out. I'd be in detention for a week for that kind of shit. It's insane. Like the kind of shit that goes on over there. I'm baffled by how you allow this to exist, and it is entirely an America thing.
Oh, wow. The imperialists asked for more discipline, right?
Yes,
of the people with the least amount of power. What a surprise. Okay, let's go to Scott.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of understand what you're saying, Sneaky Debate Man. It's an interesting take from someone that's not an American, but yeah, I mean, teachers are, in a sense, kind of like cops, right? They're obviously not cops, but they are, in a sense, the state officials to a certain extent, right? They're an authority figure that is a representative of the state, if you're in a public school. I think teachers, they ought to have the authority to be able to discipline children in their schools, sure, but the idea that you can call a police officer on a child because they don't want to listen to you about a cell phone is fucking absurd. A police officer shouldn't be involved unless there is like severe imminent harm that is likely to occur. And I'm saying, like, even 2 fights between kids, like, whatever happened to a principal just stepping in between 2 fucking teenagers fighting, sitting them in the fucking office and then giving them a good talking to and bringing their parents in, right? Like, the idea that you're going to involve the police here is kind of like it's the quintessential example of the prison to, the school to prison pipeline, right? The idea that we're getting teachers involved with students involved with police officers because they don't, it's such an absurdity that it's a difficult thing to do. Now, I will also say this, that as a public school teacher, you do need to be reined in to a certain extent because you are working under this idea that you have authority over children, but no parent has any say in what is occurring here, right? I think the Virginia elections really kind of showed how there's a backlash against this idea that parents are not to be involved with the education of their children. And what we really need is more parental involvement, or at the very least, you can go to a private school or homeschooling or situations like that, or school vouchers, things like that, where parents have more choice and more involvement and more say. But this separation of the parental rights from the children and this idea that the state officials are going to be taking more of an active role in this is horrendous. Like, and I guess I'll just leave it at that and we'll get into it in the debate.
Amanda.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Sneaky Debate Man. I thought the reactions were surprising to me and rather funny. So 10 out of 10 recommend reading the quote tweets. Wow. I think that we need to train teachers better on conflict resolution and that students should always be involved in how consequences are handled. I think that we need to take more of a parenting approach, and I utilize what's known as love and logic. And I think it's something that teachers could benefit from. I think anyone actually could benefit from. I do agree that parents need to be more involved. So I just want to add that we should give all parents housing so they don't have to work so hard and can be more involved.
Good take.
Revolt.
What a great take. That's awesome. I think that, like, the first thing that you need to do is, like, take a step back and realize that, like, most jurisdictions in the United States, teachers are allowed to use corporal punishment. And I think that that's great. Like, they should really be beating the fuck out of some of these kids. Like, I think that we don't bully kids nearly enough, and, like, teachers to start doing it again. I think it's fine. Like, memeing slightly aside, like, I think that, like, like, you have to have a monopoly of power. Like, we've proven that, like, that's what the state does, right? And so if you're going to run an operation like this, like, you want either the teachers or the students to have the monopoly of power. And I think it's going to be teachers every time. And so, basically that. Kids having cell phones in class, not that big of a deal. I think we could get over that. We can also put Faraday cages around the buildings, and most of the damn schools were still have lead pipes in the walls and shit, so it shouldn't be too hard to just square those up, seal them up, and make it good. Aside from those two things, like, fuck private schools and fuck vouchers. Fuck anybody advocating for them too.
Yeah.
That's it.
We can use the funds from our
revitalized
housing
fuck
market.
You too.
Right? We can use the funds from our revitalized housing market to convert all schools into Faraday cages. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you really care, but, like, and let the kids have the fucking phones. They can have phones for the rest of their life. Like, it's like you can't do the math with the calculator thing. It's like, I always have a calculator. I'm an engineer, and I fucking never don't use a calculator.
More lead in schools. Love it. Best message to come out of this channel. Let's go to Bam.
Children don't have rights. They're stupid, and they don't have, like, the reason we send them to school is because they wouldn't go on their own if they had the right, if they did say so. So someone should have the ability to, like, force children within a certain degree to get some level of education. So no, you can't keep the phone because you're stupid and you don't know how to do it. If you're in college or if you're an adult working a job, like, you're volunteering to be there, so there's, like, a different level of discretion to be given. But no, like, kids, take the phone. And also, most teachers are women. I don't think you, like, if students are getting, like, physical, like, I don't think that a teacher signs up to have to, like, break up fights or handle situations between them. Like, I don't think this person necessarily the person that does do that necessarily should be a cop, but it should be some form, probably have some form of, like, security or resource officer in a place who does specifically have that authority and that right to handle like situations where there may be physical. Like I don't think you should tell teachers to do that.
Thank you, Dooby.
I think I agree with corporal punishment for teachers. I think parents should be able to sign some kind of permission slip and allow a teacher to discipline their child physically if it comes to that. I don't think that we should expect teachers or principals to get in between like two fighting high school students. It seems like a really bad idea. And having officers in school that they can call on when a kid isn't listening because kids are assholes seems fine, right? I think if you maybe if you went to a school where that didn't have those kind of problems, where kids are assholes, they didn't give a fuck what the teacher said, we're doing coke off the fucking tables and shit in the classroom. Maybe you don't know that these problems exist in the world, but they do. In some places, kids are assholes in the classroom and make it very difficult for everybody else in the classroom to work. So if you're doing a bad job raising your kid and my kid can't learn because of it, hey, fuck your kid. Put him in jail. I don't give a fuck what happens to your kid.
Yep.
Oh, dearie. He's so lovable. DB,
Poke off the table.
Boji asked you to do the feet thing. And she gave subs, so do the feet thing.
Oh god, fine.
Okay, counterpoints.
Fucking feet thing.
Feet things and beating kids. All right. Fuck. All right. Let me pause because I'm gonna try not to be fucking.
We only want to beat the bad kids.
I do not condone
any
any
kid
of
who
this
steps out of line.
messaging.
This is like.
Yeah, raise your kid better. Okay.
Connor.
Okay, so all teachers are bastards. I guess that's what I'm hearing. All right. Anyways, fuck it.
Can you speak up?
They
Sorry.
want them to be bastards.
Yes. So also, please, if my volume is shitty, please turn it up on your end because I'm maxed out on my end. So basically, yeah, Spoon. Just because like you went to a nice school in Europe doesn't mean that the United States doesn't have fucking problems. Like you've seen the news, right? We got like drug problems and fighting problems and shooting problems, and we're expecting like 40 and 50-year-old women to handle this shit. Like, yeah, it fucking sucks. And to answer the general question, more discipline or less discipline, more discipline, because the whole point is that you should have teachers and administrative and disciplinary deans handle the shit. That way you don't have to call a cop, and a cop should only be there, as I think FLS said or somebody said, in events of like great death or great bodily harm or risk of injury or anything like that. And like some people were saying, we don't expect like our middle-aged, predominantly female or women teachers to throw hands with high school students. So that means that you need disciplinary deans who are trained in conflict resolution skills with love and logic. But when love and logic fails, know how to do a escort position and know how to take a punch, because that's sometimes what's demanded from disciplinary deans in shitty schools. So what happened to a principal stepping between two people fighting? That was one of the questions asked. Shitty parents and liability. So shitty parents sent their shitty kids to shitty schools. They got into fights. People with balls stepped into those fights. They broke them up, and then the parents sued the schools because they said, how dare you put your hands on my fucking son? And as a result, we have an entire disciplinary process that basically allows kids to remain largely unsocialized for decades of their lives. It's a fucking problem, which is why I advocate for more discipline. So maybe not spare the rod, spoil the child, but like spare the discipline, spoil the child. And then, like, I think it's good to lead with love and logic, but, you don't have time to fucking socialize every single fucking kid when you're responsible for 30 students and making sure that they, like, make it through a curricula in a timely manner on an annual basis. We're already demanding a lot of our teachers. We're demanding a little bit of parents because basically we do have a shitty parent problem in the United States. And what I would say is, barring going into every house in America and fucking wagging your fingers in parents' houses, you got to wag your fingers at the students.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Spectre.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. I was looking through a study from 2013 recently about disciplining children and the effect that it has on like their graduation rates, and it was mainly actually looking at it because I was talking to an MRA activist recently, and they were complaining about the graduation rates for men being lower than women. And basically, we have two ways that we can explain this. Either A, higher prenatal exposure to testosterone has been linked to slower maturation of parts of the temporal cortex, So boys are stupider genetically because they're inferior. That's how explanation A. But the two feminists who did this study reject that explanation, thankfully. So what they actually found is that, if I can just pull up this table here. Here we go. Yeah, so they tested for like discipline in the home, and they also did like a study to follow it up to make sure that the parents weren't kind of like picking up on the predisposed gender behavior and disciplining disproportionately. But boys are like getting disciplined, and that can explain at least to a 13% of larger gender gap in externalizing the behavior by 5th grade if they're physically disciplined in the home in kindergarten, and a 15% of the larger gender gap in the 8th grade suspension rate. Yeah, like kids getting kicked out of school and shit. So, I mean, look, if you want the women to win and like systemic misandry to like come in and take boys out and them never graduate from college, like, yeah, just keep on making it more and more brutal on the discipline. And the numbers say that that's pretty much what'll happen. So I'm glad that everybody
we don't have a shitty parent problem. We have a shitty person problem. So let's not like shame parents here completely. Also, like, a lot of the time kids spend like daytime is at school. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge that it's not just parents raising their kids these days. You have so many other influences as well, especially at school. So yeah, stop shaming parents, fuckers.
When it comes to kids, we do blame parents because kids don't have rights. It's not individuals. I'm not gonna blame the kid.
It's like, not my fault. My parents have a bad kid. For fuck's sakes, like that's ridiculous.
What the fuck? Like, wait. So I'm just super fucking confused. Are you saying that more people than biological parents are raising kids? Like, what was the contention?
I'm saying that our children are raised by people other than just parents. Like, my kid spends so much time at school and has that instruction. By the time we get home, we cook dinner and it's almost bedtime. So do
you want to say shitty guardians? Like what word?
No, I'm just saying that we have a shitty person problem. We have a shitty society. It's not parents.
So you're blaming the child. You're saying that child shouldn't have just been a bad person.
No, I'm saying that people are shit. Let's not shame parents. How is that like falling?
Because it's the parents' responsibility for the behavior.
All these shit people had bad parents, and now they're shit people, and now those shit people are now influencing your kids, and now your kids are turning out bad. So
that's where we go. Okay, all right.
So I feel okay blaming the parents for this.
Thanks,
no,
Dooby,
but there's so many
it.
kids that like siblings where one of the siblings, turns out really great and the other one doesn't. Yet parenting is not shitty.
I'm still blaming the parents in that situation that you just described.
It's still the parents' fault, is why.
I mean, just because children have different levels of resilience doesn't mean that authoritarian parents don't have disparate outcomes between their children, right? We still blame the authoritarian parent. Just because, like, when you have an alcoholic dad, right? Sometimes you have a kid that turns into an alcoholic piece.
Listen, my mom was a teacher.
I'm talking about authoritarian as a parenting style.
They're all
I'm talking about I'm just talking about psychological research, right?
There's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. Let the teachers be drunk and hit your kids.
Listen, I'm talking about Jesus.
If we're gonna shame parents, I'd like to shame fathers because 80% of of single parent homes are.
Oh fuck! You have authoritarian, you have authoritative, right? You have permissive, and then you have neglect, right? Those are the 4 basic types of parenting styles, right? When you have an authoritarian parent, right? Oftentimes you will have one child that emulates the behavior of the authoritarian parent. And then oftentimes you have another child, right? That does the exact opposite of emulating the behavior of the authoritarian parent, right? So you have an alcoholic, abusive stepfather or father or whatever, right? He beats the kids. One of them turns, it's like Brothers Karamazov, right? You have Alyosha, you have Ivan, and you have Dmitri. They're all different children, but they all have a shitty dad, and Ivan's a shitty person, and Dimitri's a shitty person, and Alyosha is the hero of the story, right? Like, you still blame the parents.
He's smarter than us because he read a Russian book. I got it.
I know, yeah, but it is good. I don't want to discourage that, but like, what's
a good book?
How does that relate to the teachers being dicks at school?
Right. Well, I was just going off of Smash Point. Like, has anybody seen the viral video, Dad's on Duty?
Yes.
Has anybody seen it?
No.
Yes. Right. So in Shreveport, Louisiana, recently, they had 23 kids arrested for in a period of 3 days for fighting in school. Right?
Yes.
The cops are that fucking involved in the school, right? And so it was such an issue. Well, I mean, it's because the kids are that fucking bad, right? But you shouldn't have 23 arrests in a school. We can blame the cops, we can blame the school, we can blame the culture, we can blame whatever, right? It's not what I'm getting
kids
at.
who got into a fight, yeah.
Armed society, polite society is how I
Go
feel.
ahead, go ahead.
Okay.
Finish your story, Scott.
Anyways, well, you've already proven that you as an armed individual would just murder people for politically disagreeing.
No, not people. Just
They're gonna do it again. Please don't.
Anyways.
God, I am broke as fuck. I will pay for your hotel room so you guys can fuck. Holy shit.
I don't know. No.
Anyways, so what happened was a group of 40 dads got together and got with the school and said, why don't we just bring fathers in? And so what they did is they went on rotation, and they always had 6 or 7 fathers at the school walking around, telling dad jokes, you know, just having fathers that are from, you know, parents of the people in the school. And it has had a radical change in the behavior of the children. Most of the children say that they feel safer. Most of the children have said that there's a certain levity in the situation. One of the issues that we're talking about is kind of what Smash was saying, right? Don't blame the parents, blame people. Well, the reason we have to blame people is because the parents are so disinvolved with the lives of their children, because we've given up the education and given up the parenting to the state, and we have our children at this state institution for so long, and they're wholly inadequate to be able to deal with so many of these problems. And when we got fathers back into the schools, we're seeing massive positive effects.
Right? Like, it's long-term sustainable.
The reason we surrendered it to the state was because capitalists wanted us to fucking work more.
Oh my god!
This is not fucking
It's literally true.
We're not talking about economics right now.
Let's talk about the Prussian education model.
Let's talk about the Romanian. Let's talk about the Romanian fucking communist.
No.
Kids out of the fucking home. Killed an entire generation of kids.
Let's talk about the Rockefeller.
Socialism's gonna solve it. You fucking.
No. Rockefeller.
Let's pull back.
Hey, PrimeCayes.
Go ahead.
Rockefeller literally.
Hey, PrimeCayes, real quick. Hey, PrimeCayes. Remember when you had that little discussion with me and you said that I was seeing Marxism under every rock? I think Revolt Rise might be the exact opposite.
No. I literally described
capitalism under every rock.
Okay, was Rockefeller a Marxist? Is that what you're
the
fucking saying right now?
conversation?
Can you guys fire later? I want to ask.
Oh
Okay,
my
Fabian,
God.
you said that the parents aren't involved enough, right? So isn't that still an issue with the parenting then that you're pointing to? Yes. So can't we still blame the parents for not being involved enough?
Okay, but laying blame is somewhat helpful, right? But we want to fix this problem, right? Like we don't we need to be like, it's the parents' fault. All right, all done.
No, that's
right?
not
Like
what
we actually want to
saying.
fix.
We need to find out what the problem is first. And if you're attempting to say that the problem is somewhere that it isn't, it's not helpful to the conversation. So yeah, it seems like the issue is a parenting issue. And given that how do we fix the parenting issue? Right?
That's a really that's a really unidimensional way of taking what I said and then saying like, aha, see, it's the parents' fault, right? Like there's a lot of problems involved here. There's culture, right? There's the breakdown of families if you want to take a more conservative approach, right? There's parenting in general. There's the way teachers are doing things. So you might blame social media. There's a ton of things that you could say are parts of the problem. You want to fix
you just named you set parenting 3 different ways.
So
hey, now given that we understand that the issue is at the home, right? These children aren't being disciplined properly at home apparently, and aren't being taught how to behave in polite society.
Well, I wouldn't make that leap.
I don't know how to fix that. Right?
An advocate for peaceful parenting.
Maybe we can advocate for making it much easier to take children away from these bad parents.
Hell no.
Possibly. I might be okay with that.
Maybe we can make them.
We want the teachers to beat people, and we want the state to take away the kids.
And throw them into a system that has worse outcomes.
Shut up.
Given that that's not realistic right now, right? So within the school, within the classroom, where these bad kids are affecting other children, right? Because they have bad parents. How do we deal with that problem specifically? Do we not discipline them when they refuse to head over the phone to the teacher? They stop listening to the teacher and they don't want to comply. They don't want to shut the fuck up in class. What do you do with that kid?
Okay. Well, we say discipline.
Ways to discipline people without beating them or calling them
out. Hold on.
Come back. Amanda, and then Spoon, or Sneaky Debate Man, and then Spectre.
Yeah. Come back to me. I lost my point. Sorry.
Something about how the Turbo Dooby is. All right, let's go with Sneaky.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Oh, did I remind you?
Oh, no, go,
Yeah.
go, Amanda, go.
That solution literally is just putting kids into environments that are way worse off, have way worse outcomes. That's just absolutely ridiculous to say that we should take them away because of how disengaged parents are, as opposed to fixing society, which has made it so that this is the norm, I guess. There's my point.
Yeah, so that's unrealistic, but let's just fix society, quote unquote, whatever the fuck that means. No, but I asked you specifically, what do we do when these kids are in the classroom and they're not complying, they're not handing over the phone, they're not shutting the fuck up, they don't want to pay attention to the class at all, they're being disruptive. What do you do with those kids?
Let's go to
Discipline them.
Send them home.
Resource
All right, Sneaky Debate
To
Man,
the
Inspector.
parents who aren't paying attention or who are working, and so they can't take care of their kids, so you fuck
Give
up
me
their
a day
life.
off because I act up. Yeah, that's a
Sneaky.
good policy.
Yeah, so I think we're all agreed that it is like a
I was being
parenting thing.
sarcastic.
Right? I think we all agreed that like parents should be like more involved, right? Like now we're disagreeing to what level and what that means, like how involved and where they should be involved and what their involvement entails, right? So obviously like the dads all quitting their jobs and just like being full-time like security guards or like effectively security guards at school is not really a viable solution, right? You can't just take like half of the working population out to go and like survey schools. That's a bit, it's not really a thing. So, like, obviously you want parents to be more involved. Well, Connor, you say socialism the answer. I think it is, right? If, like, these people have more time to spend with their kids, right? Because they're more economically viable. They have their own house. They don't have to make rent. They don't have to, pay their bills so, like, scrupulously, right? Then, yes, I think they will raise better children, right? And even if they don't raise better children, right, I think having parents more involved in that, like, I think most parents do probably want to spend more time with their kids, right? Or like spending time with their kids, right?
Okay. You have my undivided fucking attention. Are you done with that rant, or do you want me to wait a second? Okay.
Right. So if you do want that, you do have to provide like the adults the opportunity to be involved.
I don't want random adults, random parents walking around school.
No.
I don't think that random parents are responsible to do
I'm not
so.
advocating for that.
But this isn't an econ discussion. I don't understand why we're trying to fight over the economics.
Let him finish it so I can yell at him.
Because he's a class reductionist, he's being a very based one right now, so just let him finish.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So
don't worry, Bam. I'll yell at him when he's done.
Right. So if you want parents to be more involved, right, regardless of what they agree in, you have to facilitate parents being involved, right? And that's not
If you're asking for
out of
dads
nowhere.
only, and nobody was asking for moms in this, only dads.
Yeah,
like,
because
the
like
point is, if
80% of
they want to be
fucking
involved, you have to facilitate it. Go ahead, Connor.
I mean, we don't want kids in more feminized.
Some of these things are fucking obvious. Like, for instance, 80% of fucking educators are women. So yeah, we need more masculine fucking shit, because oftentimes what we're talking about is we're talking about violence and drugs interrupting education. And the reason why I'm so fucking triggered right now, because this happened with the fucking last conversation too, where like every time there's a fucking problem, just throw the fucking government at it. Every single time there's a fucking problem, it's capitalism's fault. We need fucking socialism.
Wait.
Like you hold the fuck up, all right? So no, I don't want to fucking hear it, because the thing about it is, like, seriously, like this is what's fucking so dumb about these conversations is you're like, decommodify the basic human needs and workers own the means of production.
We don't have to go that far.
Hold on. Okay, hold.
I was next, but okay, like, finish.
I didn't actually say
He's
that. I just said
responding
All right,
to
shut the
Sneaky.
fuck up. Okay, so the fucking point is that we've done some of these things in the past fucking historically. We've given the state a shitload of fucking control over, like, the families within their fucking societies. And guess what they did? They fucked it up. I'm pretty sure within, like, Romania or some shit like that, they confiscated fucking babies from their fucking families. They didn't know that, like, touch was necessary for early childhood development. And as a result, they killed, like, tens of thousands of fucking kids and also made tens of thousands more, like, socially fucking dumb as shit. So when you guys talk about taking all the world's problems and then expropriating it to the fucking state and just giving the fucking state basically what amounts to unlimited power to intervene in fucking people's lives, I think you're fucking insane and you're ahistorical. It's
not. We don't.
I have to say, I haven't done that at all.
Spectre.
just nationalize the banks.
First of all.
Right, so that wasn't what Revolt was suggesting, and I think that's what he's trying to clarify with you right now. And that's
already
not
have
what I'm suggesting with you either. What I am saying is, like, simply, we're already doing a child tax credit, right? So I know that you want to, like, give people who have kids money, this will probably prevent like single motherhood a little bit more. People tend to stay together and not get divorced when they're not fighting about fucking money all the time, dude. Like, it's stuff like that. Like, make it easier for like women in early motherhood to like take care of kids, and fathers as well, with what? Money. Yeah, that you could give them for having the fucking kid. Like, do you have an issue with that?
Okay, so for me, I would rather that we figure out how so for instance, like universal healthcare and universal high quality education, universal pre-K and universal secondary education. The reason why I think those are all good solutions is because they basically supplement the income of people who are already making subsistence wages and increases their pay. Part of the reason why, Amanda, I know you're just fucking memeing, but part of the reason why I want universal high quality public education is because oftentimes single parents or households are reliant, education is childcare. That's what it is. And also on top of that, like the earlier that people get into education, typically the better off they are. There's a correlative study, not a causative study, but there's a correlative study with daycare, the Head Start program within the United States, that basically showed that while the academic achievements or whatever kind of tapered off, the socialization benefits were so much higher. These kids were so much more likely to be in college, employed, married, in stable relationships, and all that kind of stuff. And while it's correlative, it was compared to a sample population that didn't have access to early childhood daycare. So there's plenty of shit that we can do besides like I don't know if you were advocating for like supplemental UBI or
no, I'm just advocating for like I'm advocating for like government like funded and mandated paternity leave first of all. And paternity leave for that matter, and just
conservatives are fucking cringe for
and child tax credits that are going to actually be able to like help people pay for kids, because if they can pay for kids and they're not worried about money all the time, they're probably going to be less likely to get divorced. Which is like I'll concede to you, like single parent like households is the biggest indicator for struggling in school and behavioral problems, honestly. But beyond that, like another thing that can obviously cause behavioral problems, because it's like we're talking about like beating the fuck out of kids for whatever reason, like just kids who have spanked, like we can see like that they have like developmental problems in their brain like much later in life, in the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, and they become like more impulsive, more violent, more like likely to act out, axis, which is also going to lead to them probably not staying in relationships longer on average. So then you got more single parent households as well. So maybe don't spank your fucking kids is all I'm saying. And I know it disproportionately affects boys still, by the way. So again, it's just weird that the lefties over here standing up for the men, you know, in MRA.
Connor, were you saying you agree with free early childhood education? Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah. Actually, okay. So I'm actually trying to fight on the right because, you know, people, FLS, I don't mean this as an insult. I just mean this as a description. Fiscal conservatives and some social conservatives, for some fucking reason, got it into their head that you can just like slash social safety nets and that parents should make up for every fucking ill in society. And I think that's an unrealistic way to look at things. And what you need to do is you basically need to ask yourself, what creates happy, healthy, productive adult human beings? And the social support systems that get people to there where they're like self-sufficient, happy, healthy adult human beings, that's what we need to institute. Because fiscal conservatives, I'll shut up literally in the next 10 seconds. I think fiscal conservatives will often try to save a dime in order to spend a dollar. And that pisses me the fuck off because I think it's not a very holistic way of analyzing society.
I think Bam and then Scott.
Yeah, I think that although like a lot of these points are cool, I think we're dealing with a really specific issue, and we're like taking 30 steps back to like these like gigantic fundamental shifts in need. Like someone scraped their knee and then you're saying like, oh God, this is why we need universal healthcare. Like even though I'm in favor of universal healthcare, like right now we could just do a band-aid. We could just solve this minimal issue. We're talking about why do children like, you know, what to do about children who act out in school, and you're saying like we need socialism. Like there's a much.
But what about, you know, so for instance, like one of the things that they were kind of saying though that I actually agree with is like universal pre-K, because pre-K does tend to help with like socialization and early childhood development.
Yeah,
unfortunately, the left is the only people who are advocating that. Right
you can also
I don't disagree.
Government money.
Hold on a second. I don't disagree with I don't disagree with universal earlyhood child care and like that. I don't have an issue with these things at all. I just don't feel like this is the conversation. I didn't think this is the conversation I thought we would be having. All these things are valid. It just seems really broader. Like I think that just generally speaking, people when like we can't control households. We can't give everyone good parents. But I think that schools generally should be funded should be funded in a way that gives children more access to extracurricular activities and making school a place that's more enjoyable in general. If kids see school as a place that's like in not necessarily easy, like you learn things, but a place that they enjoy and a place that has people that they respect, then it helps them become generally more engaged into the curriculum. And like I think they just do a better job of like, okay, they're not going to be on this phone as much. But if that does happen, having someone in school to like handle these types of issues should just be a thing, because like I said, teachers don't sign up for fist fights. Even the guy teachers, like I know it's in a society like we expect men and women to do these things, but that's just not what I get paid for, bro. And I think that's a good excuse to have. Like,
can I make a capitalist argument real quick for fucking extracurriculars? Hey, capitalists, if you give universal after-school programs to fucking American citizens, you can exploit the labor of the adult parents for longer.
Scott.
True.
I mean, I feel like it's really simple, right?
Scott and the
Yeah. So a couple of things. First, I just want to quickly engage. It's off topic, but I just want to engage quickly with the straw man about the social safety net. The reason fiscal conservatives don't like social safety net programs isn't because, we just expect the parents to take care of it. The problem is that when you have the state come in to provide these programs, what you lose is social capital, right? When communities and families are involved to solve problems, as opposed to the state institutions, there are these cold programs that lose social capital and lose community, and that is extremely important for socioeconomic status, for education that leads in that same regard, right? For socialization, for crime, for a whole ton of things, right? Read Bowling Alone, right? Like if you want to understand the importance of social capital, you probably have read it, right? Just as a reminder. The other thing, like, I don't understand how we just dismissed with like literally every conservative fucking option, like the idea that school vouchers are somehow fucking horrible, or the idea that private schools are somehow horrible, right? Like, I get that you guys are a bunch of hardcore lefties and you just fucking like hate the idea of like parents having choice.
Literally not hardcore.
I've read a study on education like once in my life, and I understand that private schools, like probably not giving them vouchers is the best way to actually fix behavioral problems. Because when you combine like the socioeconomic status of a classroom, rich and poor, you actually have better outcomes for both groups. But go off.
Right, we're talking about vouchers, which would allow more people
you're talking about deferring more federal funding to private schools is what you're talking about doing. Then we already do, by the way.
Public schools.
It's absurd to me.
Yes,
you guys want to act like these work better when we still have to give them federal fucking funding and state funding, right?
And the outcomes are actually not that much better, considering that they also get to cherry pick like the kids that they're taking into the programs generally, right?
And the teachers.
Worst kids and the most expensive kids.
It's just not true. It's just not true.
Okay.
Number one. Number two.
Yes, it is.
Like, number two. Jesus Christ! Like, you covered up your camera just to wait until I spoke.
So no. I literally I had to take my dogs out, but now that you're talking again, like you're doing it wrong. So I'll be here to tell you.
Jesus Christ! You fucking violent authoritarian.
Anyway, I'm a violent authoritarian. You're right, and that hurts my feelings.
Stop it, guys.
Anyways, another thing, we spend depending on the state and county, we spend anywhere between $13,000 and $19,000
which
a
is
year
26th in the world for developed countries.
Knock it off. Let him finish.
You don't even know the thing I'm making. You don't even know the statement that I'm making.
You're trying to say
shut
that
the fuck up for a second.
You're trying to
say that it's too expensive.
No, you're trying to say that vouchers will allow people to.
I don't know. I would like if you could say it though.
No, you're literally all wrong about what I'm about to say. But you're a bunch of triggered fucking lefties.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna have to
shut up.
Like, let Scott finish up. So
all I'm saying is, one of the things we have to understand is that when you homeschool a child, right? what ends up happening is you have one person go out of the labor market. And when an individual leaves the labor market, the supply-demand equation in the labor market means that wages have to increase, right? Wages for everyone else have to increase when one parent stays home and you don't have a two-income household, right? The more people you have in the labor market, the less employers can pay because labor is easier to get. The less people are in the labor market, the more they have to pay in order to compete for your labor, right? Why are we spending $13,000 and $19,000 and parents are out there that would love to homeschool their children that could use that same money? Right? Like if you want to homeschool your child, why don't you just get 15 grand for the year to homeschool your child and have the same required standards that already exist for homeschool, where you have to meet educational standards, you have to pass certain tests, you have to prove that you're doing certain educational things. Like the Mormons figured this out like fucking 30 years ago on how to socialize homeschool children. And they have all kinds of programs that didn't used to exist. Khan Academy, it's not great for history and social studies, but it's great for math and science for parents that struggle in those regards. If parents were able to get $13,000 and $19,000 a year based upon where they're living so that they could homeschool their children, it would increase the wages of people that are there. And parents, Republicans that are at your school board meetings bitching about CRT would shut the fuck up because they'd be at home teaching their own fucking kids instead of bitching about the shit that you want in the schools.
Yeah, I heard Chris Rufo make the same exact argument earlier. Yes, we'll be able to fix the CRT thing because we can just pick the schools without the CRT now. Yeah, I know. But this thing about the fucking school vouchers is it doesn't actually make it to where everybody can move and go to whatever school they want. People who are economically disadvantaged are still not going to be able to pack up everything and go to a better school district every single time, which means that this is going to further exasperate the economic inequality and frankly racial inequality due to the fact that we're more segregated now than we were under Jim Crow that we're already trying to fucking fix.
I agree with everything you're saying.
You can't get some transportation. Like
I thought
the school voucher system can't fix that.
I must be muted because I know I'm speaking right now. I agree with what you're saying, Spectre. Like the one thing that I will grant to FLS is there. I made that. I used to always make that in front that exact same argument, and I'm still against against school choice. But the idea that the money follows the school is actually connected to the main school itself funding actually isn't true. It seems to only be linked to perishables, like the amount of the money that goes to food for the school and I guess very base level supplies for the school. But the school would schools would still be have similar levels of funding even if they had less kids. Even with the vouchers, that's not. No, that's just not a good argument.
That's just not true. It is. Hold on. They decide public school funding on two things: test scores, graduation rates. Sorry, three things: test scores, graduation rates, and attendance. Right, the amount of people that you have going to your school. So it will absolutely affect everybody.
Absolutely have this conversation during the open, right? We can have a lot of fun yelling.
This is the open.
This isn't the open.
Oh, the open panel. I thought you meant the discussion.
Yeah, sure, fair enough. During the open, right? We can go at each other. We can murder each other. That was gonna be great. It'd be good content. But we try to focus on this particular topic. Let's go to Sneaky Debate Man and Dooby.
But like I said earlier, it seems really simple, right? If you want nicer kids, right, nicer individuals, they need to grow up in nicer environments, right? That means houses where they don't have food insecurity, where they've got two parents and they're not struggling to make the rent, and the parents get ample time with their children, and the school has extracurricular activities, and all these good things, right? This stuff all requires money, right? How are you going to get this money to these people, right? How's the school going to have more money? How the parents going to have more money, and not just more money, more time to spend with their children, right? It does require broader systemic reform, right? It does require broader systemic reform. You can't have all these things without broader systemic reform. Right, so yes, I know it's a bit of a cop-out to say, we'll just do socialism, right? But actually, yes, if you did have a broader systemic reform which permitted these people more economic mobility, a higher time preference, right? Then yes, you would have nicer people produced as a result.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think I agree with what Bam said earlier. Right? We're not really talking about the actual topic. You guys are just kind of saying, let's do socialism. Let's say we do socialism, and you still have some kids that are just shit. They're just assholes. like to fuck with the teachers, like to fuck with other students. They're bullies, whatever, right? So in your utopian system, whether it's Ancapistan or fucking the USSR, right, whatever the fuck it is, right? If these children are acting out in the classroom and they're not listening to the teacher and they're being disruptive, and the teacher says, hey, put that phone away. Hey, stop watching YouTube videos in the fucking class. Hey, shut the fuck up while I'm teaching. And this kid is not listening and they don't want to leave the fucking classroom. The teacher tells them to leave. What do you do with that kid? Should the teacher have the ability to call in a cop and say, hey, kid, get the fuck out? And if they don't listen, drag them out of the classroom with force?
Dragging out of the classroom with force, if they're like big enough to like physically hurt the teacher, like, yeah, absolutely, that's fine. I don't give a shit about that. You can call in a cop to do it. Beating them, like, that's probably not a good idea, because we have evidence that like hitting kids is the easiest way.
Okay, that's fine.
Turn out well.
Okay, but so there's a video that went viral a while ago. This girl, she's sitting in a classroom desk. Cop comes in, she's not listening when he tells her to get out of the desk, causing a massive disruption. So he drags her out and like flips over the fucking desk, drags her over the floor, right? I think he handled that the wrong way, right? Probably just handled that the wrong way. But, right, if you have someone like that, right, who is not physically imposing, but is still being extremely disruptive, not complying with the teacher's instructions, being disruptive to the entire classroom, destroying everybody else's ability to learn in there. What is there really an issue with them having the ability to call a cop or some security guard or something?
I've never seen a child refuse to leave the classroom. They're usually more than happy to.
Oh yeah, I've seen that happen plenty of times.
Okay, well, I was more than happy to get the fuck out and just know that.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of kids sit in the classroom and fucking rant at the teacher for 10 minutes and throw I used to throw batteries at the board when the teacher's back
and use axe and the lighter and make
some kids are just shit. Yeah, some kids are just assholes. Like, so what do you do with those kids? And I'd like to address it to Fabian, because he had a massive issue with me saying that the cop should be there. So okay, so you have a kid who's just being an asshole. What do? Do you allow them to just destroy the classroom for that day? Like what do you take the kids in the classroom somewhere else and leave them there? Like, what the fuck do you do with them?
The cost of removing them is also disruptive.
I was just to answer your question.
Let's Spectre.
Oh no, he just asked me a question. So
on Sneaky, and then you can go afterwards.
The cost of removing them is also disruptive, right? So if you've got like a fucking kid in the back of the classroom watching YouTube on his phone, and he's like, no, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to sit here and watch YouTube on my phone. Fuck you, right? And you call a cop on him, right? Calling a cop into the classroom actually disrupts the lesson. It like stops everybody else from learning far more than just allowing that kid to sit there and watch YouTube on his phone, right? So you just let him watch YouTube, right?
No.
Children don't have rights.
No, not necessarily at all. What are you talking about?
You don't give them a right to watch.
So if he's sitting there watching without headphones in, and other people around him can hear the video, he's getting other kids to watch a fucking video, and he's teaching kids that they can watch YouTube and be on the phone in the classroom, and the teacher won't do shit about it.
So the classroom,
classroom turns into a free period where everybody's just fucking around, which happens all the fucking time. What do you do with that kid?
Okay,
right, so you're escalating this.
We have a level 2 hype train going on, so everyone help out the channel. We really we would appreciate it. So sub to the channel, give bits or give subs about the hype train. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Sneaky.
Right, so you're escalating the scenario that you originally described, right? So I understand like the premise of like the kid is like causing a disruption, right? The premise that I'm laying out is you have to minimize disruption to the lesson, right, to maximize learning, right? And in cases where less disruption is going to be caused by like ejecting this child from the class, which is, by the way, most cases, you just let them do it, right? In the very minor cases where it causes less disruption to like forcefully eject the kid from the class, like I guess you could have somebody to do that.
Why do I send my kid to school and you allow them?
Can we let Fabian respond, please?
Yeah. So the distinction that I want to make here is that there is a difference between a teacher doing something, right, or a school administrator doing something, and getting children comfortable with the idea of the police doing things, right? Like the distinction here isn't that, like, obviously if you have a kid kicking the shit out of another kid, right, like you need to stop that. Obviously, if you have a child that is disturbing the classroom in some way and is being recalcitrant and refusing to like obey any fucking orders, you have to fix that situation. But two things are important here. Number one, the state doesn't own your fucking children, and they don't have rights over your fucking children. The parents have rights. So you have to do the minimal amount of harm here, because you are a caretaker for someone else's child. So you can't beat them, right? And if there's and to Sneaky Debate Man's point, right? Like if a kid is causing a massive disruptance, then yes, you need to forcibly remove them at a certain point. But if a kid is just sitting in the back on his fucking phone, not paying attention, then yeah, you deal with that situation at a different fucking time. You contact the parents, you contact the administrators. Maybe at a certain point, they're not allowed in the school anymore. Maybe they're punished. There are a lot of different means and methods we can do, but but escalating to violence needs to be the last solution, and using the police, right, is an even more aggressive solution, right? Because if you understand how policing works in these scenarios in schools, is yes, officers have discretion, and school correctional officers tend to use more discretion, obviously, than your typical cop. But it's still an issue here where you have the police literally in the school dealing with situations that obviously could be solved by the school and school administrators. Mm-hmm. And instead you're creating an authoritarian environment where they're beginning to see police as an enemy, right? Like you're not helping a situation between the police and the citizenry by having them grow up in this authoritarian system. And these more extreme ideas of beating kids, like that shit just doesn't work. And it's proven that it doesn't work, right? The HPA axis swells, it stops prefrontal cortex development. Neurons that wire together fire together. And when you have emotional kids with problems at home that you probably don't understand, and you respond with fucking violence because these kids need help, because maybe they don't have a father at home, maybe they have mental health issues, maybe they have a whole host of fucking shit that you're not aware of, and if your response is to fucking beat the kids or to bring the police, that's a serious fucking problem that causes more problems and doesn't actually fix them. Yes, drag a kid out if a kid needs to be dragged out because he's doing some wild shit. But you don't need to use the cops.
Wait, so to be clear, you're saying that the teacher, again, most teachers are women. You're saying that the teacher should be responsible for dragging this kid out.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying the teacher can call the principal and get assistance if they need assistance. Just like they would with a cop, but you don't need to use a fucking cop with a gun and like a uniformed officer.
Okay. Fuck! No, come on. Holy shit. Okay, so no, it doesn't need to be a cop. As a matter of fact, it shouldn't be. It should be an administrative or disciplinary dean. At most, if a kid is throwing fucking hands, then a cop should be on standby. But they should be like the de-escalated, trained fucking Officer McFriendly, nice hippie cop, okay? I did this fucking job. And the reason why is just like FLS just fucking said, you don't want a fucking cop to have that kind of impression on fucking young people. And on top of that, you don't want somebody with a gun to come into your fucking class in order to wrestle you into the fucking ground and slam your head into the fucking pavement. It's a bad thing for fucking everybody. So what needs to happen is what's happened is schools have off-put this responsibility to law enforcement because they don't want the liability. But it comes with all these negative cultural externalities that we're all talking about. So what has to happen, and you, Dooby, you are correct, that it should not be 50-year-old fucking 130-pound fucking women who are throwing hands with fucking high school students. That's a dumb expectation. So what it has to be is a disciplinary or administrative dean specifically trained for that purpose, not just to de-escalate, but also trained in escort and trained in order to get this done with the minimum amount of force. Law enforcement officers should follow the same amount of fucking training, and they should be on standby. They should not be the primary person who's administering discipline within schools. That's fucking insane. And the fact that we've let our culture get this far is toxic as fuck.
I agree, and also in Sneaky to make man, we shouldn't I'm completely fine with embarrassing kids. Like if you you can't just sit on your phone, you can't do what you want. Like a teacher does have to have some not violence authority, but has to have some level of authority over their classroom. A student can't decide that I'm opting out, and the teacher call them out on it, call the teacher's bluff and lose.
What are your design? What are your design?
No, I don't care if nobody learns the rest of that day. My desire is the teacher holding authority over their space.
So when you
But
do that,
how?
right, like what you actually do is like make the learning outcomes for
I don't
everybody
care
in the
about
classroom
learning.
worse.
I never
So
said
it's
anything
not-
about learning.
Yeah, but that-
What?
I'm talking about
You're
authority
your
over the class.
school.
I do.
I'm saying that you're hurting the learning environment. You're trying to save the learning environment for these 20 minutes of class
You
over
put
the
this kid-
long term of losing the teacher's
Oh,
respect over their
and
classroom.
not just that student. So imagine that student has a fucking shitty attitude every single day. What, we're just supposed to let him not get an education because he's
Here's the
an
thing, if you-
asshole?
who has enough
hold on,
money?
because-
Who has enough money for a resource officer, right? You can put the kid on an IEP, so when he acts up like that, you send him to the resource officer, and he goes to his own classroom and he sorts out his issue, whatever it is. The class goes on perfectly.
Just
That's
But we don't
that's
have
not-
that.
That's not letting them
IEPs
do
are
it.
fucking
That's different
terrible,
from letting
by
them
the
do
way.
it.
I was just gonna bring up IEPs. Both of my kids
They're
actually
awful.
have one. I have a meeting on Thursday, so and in those meetings they discuss strategies and things that you can do with your children in order to diffuse situations like this, and you make a plan together. So.
Yeah.
If your
It's-
school
it's
district
like
has
how-
the funding for the people.
It's not
Sure,
like there's
that's
no
true.
recourse for these children just like choosing to opt out of class. Obviously, there's recourse, right? But you've got to consider there's more than one person in this classroom. And again, it shouldn't be a cop. That's ridiculous, right? Actually, in my school, the deputy headmaster was that guy, and he was ex-SAS, which did terrify the shit out of everyone because they thought he was going to kill you, but obviously he wasn't.
Spoon, this is no, just absolutely not. Like, anybody who's a parent thinks, like I hope thinks this is a fucking insane take. You don't let the student do whatever the fuck they want.
No.
For the disruption or whatever. No,
I
you
don't-
fucking set rules.
No.
set
I said
boundaries,
there's
you
still
tell them to
recourse,
fuck
right? They
off.
can still be taken out of the room. Like we're talking like the top of the top, right? Kids on their phone, you tell them to leave the room. 99% of the time they leave the room, right? They go to the workroom, and there's recourse taken there, right? There's still authority expressed by the teacher, right? In this 1% of scenarios where the kid fucking like brings out a knife and starts stabbing kids, like you got a guy to deal with that. I think this is like perfectly consistent, right? In all cases, there is recourse, and in all cases, like appropriate force is applied, and like not just the consideration for that child is taken into account, but the consideration of the entire classroom, the entire school.
And
There's
you
a difference
added
between there. Okay, you all hadn't said nothing. You good?
I was just gonna say really quick. They added autonomy. Like if you let the kids like make the decisions themselves, like is like hugely beneficial in development. Like and it makes like big gains too.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that there's a level of like there is a level of authority that a teacher has to have over their classroom. Like I understand your point of like I'm appealing to the rest of the class, like, but like if you let a student try your bluff, like forget about that one student. Now the class doesn't respect you, like because everyone knows that teacher like that you knew you could get over on, and when you were a kid how you taught that teacher.
No. Just because the
dealt with
teacher
it.
doesn't come hard down doesn't mean that child doesn't still get, like I said, doesn't get a recourse, right? Just because the teacher like goes like, right, you have to leave the room, and they say it softly or nicely, or like the kid doesn't respect it, and like somebody else has to come and do it, right? The point is there's still a consequence there, and that's what the children respect, the consequence. No, it doesn't matter if the teacher itself, right? The point is that consequence is enacted, and that's what the children don't want.
Sure, but that was different from you saying like for that day, just let them do what they want. That
No, that's
I'm
not-
disagreeing with specifically
That's
that.
not what he said. He was just simply saying that like the teacher should probably not be the disciplinarian. The teacher should be seen as the educator. You don't want to cross those lines with kids. I think it's not good for their like learning experience.
No. Oh my god. Like you have to understand, like, by compartmentalization is so fucking weird. Like, I don't know why we don't expect like this is why I fucking hate this shit. It's like you should be capable of violence when violence is appropriate, and you should be capable of tact and communication and love when that is appropriate. And the fact that we keep compartmentalizing this shit where it's like, oh, only one dude can be violent and only one person can be peaceful, you're making one dude be a fucking monster, and you're making a bunch of fucking people be sheep and expropriate their fucking violence onto other fucking people. It's a weird and like inhuman way to be that leaves people like emotionally
If a teacher has to be violent because like a student is like big enough to hurt other students or them and they are becoming violent, I have zero problems with that. But I don't think that's what we're talking about, and I don't think it's a common occurrence for a teacher either.
Sure. And by the way, like, I'm not saying like every fucking teacher. Like I think what everybody said so far is that like we're not expecting every single teacher to be capable of this or even want to engage in this behavior. But what I would say is that like having one disciplinary dean in a school of like 3,000 kids, that's not enough like people, right? Having one school resource officer with 3,000 kids is not enough people to maintain discipline, right? So what you would have is you would basically have one person who was like a teacher who was okay as kind of like an assistant during an escort scenario where like, you know, a substitute could
Can
go
you
watch their
explain?
class.
I sounds like
while
you're saying
handling-
escort. What are you saying?
Yeah, so an escort position. So basically, like if somebody is trying to fight you or whatever, there's a really simple way to control somebody without causing them violence, which is holding their wrist and holding their elbow above the elbow joint. They can still hit you like while you're in that position, but basically you can control them without hurting them, and you can move them in an escort position to a safer location. So the
Is
reason
it
why that's so
escort? Can you spell it?
yeah,
escort, like lead,
Yeah.
like walking them.
Okay.
out of
Yeah,
classroom.
ESCORT.
Okay.
And like the reason why this is so important is because it's like there's a lot of ways to hurt yourself and a lot of ways to hurt a student if you don't know what you're doing, which is why administrators are trained in this stuff, because it's a higher liability. But what I'm saying is like right now, you know, my mom used to be a high school teacher. You know, what's happening right now is the school administration won't deal with disciplinary issues because they don't want parents up their ass. They're leaving it to the teachers and the SRO. The SRO overcompensates because they think that they're the disciplinarian. The school gives them shit for fucking being disciplinary with the kids, and so do the parents. So the school resource officer says, fuck you, I'm not dealing with any disciplinary issues. Call me when there's a fucking shooting. And then as a result, you have a bunch of 50-year-old fucking female teachers who like their options are call a dean who's going to show up 30 minutes later after she's already gotten her fucking ass kicked, or call a school resource officer who's not showing up unless somebody gets stabbed. There has
And
to
then
be a
he's probably
fucking-
hiding behind a van.
I didn't hear you, but there has to be a middle solution here that's obviously better for everybody.
Well, I mean, but what are we talking about? Like the solution for what? The few times that like a teacher may be forced into a situation where they have to be violent to like protect other children?
Everyone has an issue with that.
This is weird because we're not talking about violence. We're talking about, well, maybe we are on some extent.
Are we just talking about physically removing a child from a classroom if
I
nobody?
was talking
Yeah.
about discipline in general.
Yeah, like I mean, if a kid is being disruptive enough and refusing to leave, which is also, again, I acted up a lot in school to get them to send me out of class and eventually send me the fuck home. But
Right.
yeah, like if
No,
that's
but
what the
Spectre,
issue is, then sure.
Do you understand that like 99% of the time the kid's going to go with no issue, but for that 1% of the time there should be somebody who knows what they're doing to escort the kid to the
And that's
office.
what the
That
dean is for.
that
And
is-
I figured that like
okay,
one
but-
dean for 3,000 people, probably not enough. But like if you have a school with 3,000 people, have 3 of them. I don't know, like however many you need to like control for that being a thing at the same time in 2 classrooms.
Okay, I guess I just went to a wilder fucking high school than y'all. Like straight up, like
Yeah.
fucking
Bro,
people
we were fucking
Yeah.
smoking weed and fucking in the bathrooms and
Yeah,
doing coke
like,
and getting into
literally-
fist
Guys
fights
had a
and
lot
getting
of fun.
stabbed and like
yes,
all sorts of shit. So,
all of that
yeah.
stuff happened at my high school, but like nobody.
So do you think
Okay,
three
fine.
disciplinary deans and a school resource
Went to a
officer
very
who
nice
shows
school.
up 20 minutes later is an appropriate amount of fucking administrative and disciplinary and fucking action in order to handle that kind of shit?
in order to
What's the
handle?
alternative?
Well, you were talking about handling that. You were talking about disrupting the learning environment. Like if
what's
kids
the-
are
what's
doing
the-
drugs in the
they're
bathroom,
for-
I already
think
told
they're
you how
for
to solve for that, but nobody wants to hear about like fixing the things that lead to these problems. So
I
What-
hope
what's
it's
the
not
alternative,
cameras. What is it?
Connor, like-
we'll talk later.
Okay, all right.
I think I was speaking more
the original contention is based off of a video, right? Like we're so far beyond that it feels like we've forgotten what the topic is. The original video is she goes to a kid and says, "Hey, let me get your cell phone," and then the kid's like, "Nah, I'm good." And then she's like, "Cool, I'm gonna call the administrator and the police officer, and the police are gonna escort you, and then we're gonna bring your parents, and then we're gonna make an authoritative decision. And what's likely gonna happen is you're never gonna be allowed to have your cell phone when you're at school, yada yada yada." And then people are upset because it's like, why the fuck are you calling the cops? Because a kid is like, "Nah, I don't want to give you my cell phone." Right? About involving the police at a level of something that could very easily be solved with just being like, "All right, cool. We're going to deal with this later. Like this is going to be a problem later," and then calling the principal and then getting the parents involved without getting the police involved.
I
Okay,
don't
like,
think
that's the
anybody's
original
pro-police in
point
this
of
situation.
the-
I don't
the
think anybody is
parents-
pro-police.
I
in
actually,
this
I actually
situation.
thought
part
that
of
everything
this.
the teacher said, like people who have problems with what the teacher said, I actually thought everything she said was completely fine because like the point she was getting across wasn't to like she wanted to be in this authoritarian state, like authoritative state. Like, I think I'm okay with teachers like having some level of disciplinary action with like in classroom. If anything, I want that to be the main place that happens. I don't want every kid to have to go to the office and potentially get suspended and things like that. So I feel like all she was doing from her conversation was saying that like there's 1,000 other worse places, this like way more difficult ways this can go, or you can just sit your phone into the classroom until the end of class. And to me, that was like, oh, like she's trying to be reasonable. Like she's saying like this is a super reasonable way of handling the situation. I think she was probably bluffing on part of it, like maybe the police. I don't even think she said she would call the police. She was saying like if we get administration involved, and like if like I think she was just showing the way it scales. Like if you keep saying no, eventually this is where it goes, and that gets way more dramatic. Or you can just sit in the back of the classroom. I actually thought her methods were fine.
I think there's an issue of using that level of threat towards children, right? Like the problem is that we're this comfortable with the police and being involved because of the issues that Counterpoints kind of laid out, right? Like the issue here is like whatever happened to like just joshing a kid. Like whatever happened to like, all right, everybody, apparently fucking Timmy's got to be on his phone. Everybody look at Timmy. Hey, Timmy, how's that YouTube video going? Like whatever happened to just embarrassing a kid? Whatever happened to just asserting your control over the classroom without having to be like, hey, I'm going to get the cops involved, right? Like that's an uncomfortable.
Like, what if that doesn't work?
Okay, if that doesn't work, like
wouldn't work.
If it doesn't work, then you deal with that after class. Like if like again, we're talking about a rare situation where the kid refuses to leave, the kid refuses
it's not
to get
that
up his
rare.
phone.
Yeah, but like we're talking about what should happen in these rare situations, right? We're saying like what is like the absolute maximum, like what is like the dealing with like the.
I mean, if we've shifted the away from the video, right, where we're now talking about those rare instances, right, then that's a different than the topic.
Because the school needs to obviously like facilitate these like rare instances, because like even though they are rare, they will happen, right? Unless they need to have like somebody on standby to deal with these rare instances, right? Which means like we do agree that there should be someone in the school, like an administrative dean, for example, who is capable of dealing with these things.
And my argument is that you need to use the least amount of force.
I think everybody agrees with that.
No matter
what, agrees with
because these aren't your fucking kids.
I think everybody agrees with that.
Well, apparently we've been talking about beating the fucking kids, right?
I feel like that's a meme.
It's necessary.
I don't think that. Yeah.
Like
no, I think it's necessary. But I'd like to ask you. I'd like to ask you guys, because it seems like you guys just generally have an issue with police being involved at all, or any kind of like outside authority or state authority being involved in the schools. But I mean, I went to like 3 or 4 different schools and high schools, and in 3 of them were these kind of schools where you had the metal detector, you had like you had an SRO, but you also had security at the gates. They would lock the gates and shit sometimes because there were like drug dealers that would come in. There's an active gangs in the area and in the school. And they would do like random sweeps with dogs in the classrooms to check for drugs. Like at the time, right? It made me actually feel safe because I knew that nobody was going to try to fuck around in the classroom when this was going on, right? So the classroom was actually a productive place because everybody was afraid that they're going to get arrested if they fucked up. Now, and given that this is happening in a place where the surrounding neighborhood and the place that these kids are coming from aren't that way, they're not that safe, right? A lot of times they're walking home in these areas that have very active gang presence and drug dealers in every fucking corner. What's the problem with like making schools a safe space for these children, for education, and doing everything you need to do to keep those influences out of there?
I think I said I'm fine with the police like coming in, and yeah, like I understand you need fucking cops at some high schools. It sucks. I wish that we fixed the problems that made that the case and like like we all know what schools it's happening at. Like you said, it's the like inner city schools, or in my case, the poor rural school with the like fucking Confederate flag as the like team flag and all that shit. Like this is where it is.
Like I feel like
I wish we fixed that issue, but yeah, until then you need cops in the fucking school.
I just want to point out how silly it is to say we need to create a safe space while advocating for violence and shaming children.
Wait, hold on. Wait, 1 second.
Use violence unless it's necessary.
I said we use violence.
Why?
And I think it's necessary way more often than you guys are saying. That aside, really quickly though. So yeah, it's not a safe space for the kid that's being an asshole, right, and disrupting the classroom and being a bully or whatever the fuck they're doing, but it's a safe space for everybody else, right? All these other kids who aren't fucking up, who aren't destroying everybody's educational experience, right? It's a safe space for them, right? So yeah, I don't care if your kid's a shithead, right? Whether because you're a bad parent or he's just like some kind of like mentally a sociopath, a psychopath, or whatever the fuck, and he's just being a dick. I don't give a fuck about that kid, right? Take him out of the classroom, expel him. I don't care what happens to him really, right? But I want to make it a safe space for everybody else.
Don't you feel like that creates a
Some
cycle
people
of
that have
those
bad
children?
home lives. Is that
Right,
what you're
yeah.
saying? Like, what the fuck?
You're the ward. The state has become the ward of these children during that period of time that they are there. And what does that mean? That means that you are a caretaker of someone else's child, right? Like
Sure.
you so when you get in this area and you say, okay, well, for the benefit of everyone, because this gets into, I want to avoid
Send
the
them to a fucking
consequentialist-
preschool or something.
right.
It's
I
not
mean,
that-
like the real
not that
issue
crazy.
here, and it's kind of a common issue when talking to people is like, what are your ethical standards, right? Are you a virtue ethicist? Are you a consequentialist? Or are you deontologist?
None of those things.
I don't think we have to go
Nobody cares about.
anywhere near
Right,
that.
but
for this
yeah,
conversation.
well, unfortunately, politics and public policy is
And
downstream. from
nobody
philosophy and
putting
culture.
yourself in
But-
one of those boxes never works because nobody actually sticks to them, and it's just a waste of time. So let's just
Right,
have an actual conversation.
But when you're okay, it's not a waste of time.
It is a
That
waste of
means okay. Well, fuck off. It's not a waste of time. I'm speaking, right?
Burn
Like
the
the issue here is that everyone seems to be taking this, like at the very least, Dooby is taking this idea that like the ends justify the means, so long as that we can secure the safety and the education of the most amount of children, we can punish heavily those children that are disrupting other children, right? Like it's a numbers game here, and I think that that's a wrong
Always
moral
was.
approach to the situation and a wrong approach to education, right? Like that child matters just as much, if not sometimes more, than the
Bullshit.
children whose education they're influencing.
So is the
Like
prescription
the
to
squeaky-
use?
the
is the
squeaky
pres-
wheel
hold on,
gets
I
the
just want
grease.
to understand. So is the prescription to use violence if a kid is being disruptive, or is the prescription to use violence when a kid is being violent
It's
and like
ridiculous.
dangerous?
Hold on. So
I'll take
sometimes
the radical
Wait,
position
wait,
is
wait,
that they're
both.
children, and you should use
Wait,
violence
no.
only to stop them in the immediate action of them committing
Yes,
violence.
I'm not saying you keep on beating them up after you have them under control either. I'm just saying sometimes like 17-year-olds can be fucking big, dude, and they can hurt other people, and you got to get in there and stop them from doing that, and that's fine. Holy shit! Now can Dooby answer which one?
obviously if there's a fight happening, yeah, you have to use violence sometimes to stop that. But let's say they're just being an asshole in the classroom and they're refusing to leave, refusing to get out of their chair, whatever. They're being disruptive. Yeah, if they're refusing to leave, they're refusing to get out of the chair, and they call in an SRO and they're still not listening. Yeah, drag them out of the fucking chair, drag them out of the classroom. If that's what it takes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you put
hold
them in
up.
the escort
You
hole
do
that I was
with
talking about and take them out.
You do that with the minimum force required, and that's the thing is like this takes
Yeah,
a
of course.
certain a certain specialized thing. Unfortunately, we're just dealing in reality here. Okay. Some law enforcement officers are on the street for a little bit too long, and they're used to when somebody talks shit to them to sticking their face into fucking cement. So,
Yep.
if you're going to have somebody who's going to be taking care of children, regardless of whether or not these are good children or poorly behaved children or they're assholes or they're jerks or whatever, then it has to be specifically trained in a certain way to use the minimum force possible to achieve the desired result. And on top of that, this should not be a first resort. This should be a last resort. And not only should it be a last resort, but there should be an intermediate solution where an administrative dean who's specifically in charge of discipline can come and be the first contact to try to do use love and logic, as we mentioned earlier. And then when love and logic fails, use the minimum force necessary to resolve the situation. This is actually like it's not straightforward because we're talking about people's kids, but it is straightforward in the sense that we need to do it. And then FLS, before you go, I just wanted to say, yes, we're making a utilitarian calculus when it comes to how we deal with certain people, because basically what ends up happening is we have limited resources, limited time. We have these kids until they're 18 years old. We have to make judgment calls about how we expend our resources, and especially if we're going to use a public institution, we have to say we're going to do what benefits the most amount of kids possible. Now, if you're saying we need more resources to take care of the exceptions, okay, but I doubt that.
Right.
I doubt
Okay.
that's
So
what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that needs to be pointed out because I think it helps people understand why others disagree, right? Because conservatives almost always take a deontological perspective, and that's half the fucking country, right? So you're going to have to engage with that part of the country. But the other thing, too, is I think maybe we need to put this in a narrative structure because we're falling apart, like with the details. Like, you have a child, right? And this child is a problem child that is causing problems, right? Very definition of a problem child, right? They're constantly disrupting the classroom. They're doing whatever the fuck they want. They have a bad attitude,
Name
right?
Dooby,
The
got
idea
it. Yeah, sure.
that the idea, what's that?
I want to hear it. I
Name
want to hear
Dooby,
it.
go ahead.
Right. So the idea that we have to talk about the psychological effect that is different between what happens when you have a police officer come in and remove them and then you expel them, right? Or you suspend them and you use these authoritarian these authoritarian, ways of getting rid of this problem child, or understanding, hey, maybe this kid has oppositional defiant disorder for a reason. Maybe this kid has conduct disorder for a reason. Maybe we need to investigate those things. Like, we have to understand that we have to treat those kids with love just as much as we treat the kids whose education is being affected by them acting out in the classroom, because we are wards of these children, right? Like, this idea that we will just punish them, right? And that we will just get rid of them so that the other kids can move on with their education, and that we can use police and that we can use these very authoritarian tactics. You're causing more harm than good to your society in the end, because these kids are the ones that need the most attention and the most help. These are the ones that need to see resources.
Yeah, I was about to say, generally when children act out, like, it's probably because school is basically one of their only few outlets or one of the only places they get to act as a child. So, like, I do think that, like, extra attention needs to be had to these situations. I don't like the cold, calculated roboticism we're making of teachers are only supposed to be educators. Like, a teacher is also, like, a specific kind, is a parent in that situation. Like, I don't like a teacher should be able to, like, delve out stuff, like a situation that happened in classroom. Like, every time a student acts out, like, oh, we have to call the office and let the professional deal with it. Like, sometimes a teacher just saying, like, hey, stop being a dick, and if you don't, like, scale up the situation, saying, like, again, I don't think she was actually gonna call the police, but just like when you're dealing with a annoying 10th grader saying, like, hey, we could do all these things, we can involve your parents, we can involve administrators, you'll probably be suspended. Like, I don't consider that threats. I think that's just like helping children who have undeveloped minds process the magnitude of the situation they're in, where they're trying to look cool in front of their friends, and realize that this would be way easier for me to just hand over the phone. Like, that's not a bad threat. That's like a parent level thing.
No,
Children with undeveloped minds? What?
Can we hold on? Can we acknowledge that, like, it's our fault as, like, American parents or whatever for not allowing our teachers to say, hey, shut up, you're being a dick. Like, because what happened is that kid went home and they were like, oh, I wasn't doing anything, and then Mrs. Johnson called me a dick in front of everybody, and then the parents get all fucking riled up and they storm down there like, did you call my son a penis? And then as a result, the teacher backs down, the administration backs down, everybody backs down, when realistically, if the parents said, hey, were you being a dick? Were you on your phone? Were you disrupting class? Were you talking shit to the teacher? Oh, well, if you were being a dick, then shut the fuck up and listen to your teacher. So that's kind of where it's like, yeah, there are shitty teachers. I went to public schools. Like, obviously, man, I could tell you some stories. But at the same time, I basically knew when I went home that my parents were not going to take my side. They were absolutely not going to take my side. They were going to assume that the deans and the teachers were correct most of the time. And if I did something fucking stupid, then it was on them to address it with me afterwards. And that's what I'm kind of saying. Like, we have to, like, re-inculcate that culture where we're willing to let the guardians and the mentors of the educational institution to have some kind of disciplinary and sociological latitude. Like they gotta be able to tell our kids.
You're gonna hate this answer because now I'm gonna be joining the rest of the panel. But I'll add a conservative base take at it too. Number one, you're gonna have to get fathers back in the homes, and number two, to with the lefties, you're gonna have to change the economic situations.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So, like, how do you get fathers back in the homes though without fixing the economic situation?
the state. You bully them.
Well,
into
I mean,
it.
it was a two-part answer, right? So
Yeah.
where we have different policy prescriptions on how to change it. Like we have different policy prescriptions on how to do that, right? But but descriptively, we have the same opinion there.
Yeah, just make poor people make it easier for them to not be fucking poor. Fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Fucking
I
base.
agree. It's just
we should also say everybody shouldn't
I
have to
just
have
don't want
children
to
at all and make it easier for them to
like
get
it.
abortions. 'cause
I
they
was
shouldn't
just
be
gonna
having
say,
kids
let's
before.
abolish children.
Let's go. Let's go.
You generally shouldn't be having
We've
kids
gone
before.
so left wing, we've become anti-natalist. All right.
Let's.
For poor people, yeah, poor people shouldn't be having kids.
God.
Okay.
I agree.
We do have 3 parents on stream, just so you know. We got Amanda, we got Connor, and we got Scott. Let's go, Sneaky.
I'm a dog parent, okay? If you're a cat parent, I'm a dog parent, okay? Anyway.
Fuck you, buddy.
Connor,
Seriously, that's so annoying when people claim their parents as their pet.
Let me show
I'm
you
just
my
doing it so-
son.
No, it's okay.
I'm just doing it so
Look at
annoying.
my son.
Connor, to your point, right? I think often the times, like we said this earlier, right? The bad kids are gonna have the bad parents, right? So if you call that kid a dick, right, and that kid goes home and says the teacher called me a dick, right? Chances are that parent's just gonna beat them for being bad at school, right? They're just gonna be like the bad parents who have the bad child, and that's why that child gets called a dick at school. I think it's like very unlikely that you have like a very nice child who goes home and like whines to their parents, and then those very nice parents go into school and make a very nice complaint, right? It's like it doesn't follow, right? So I think like berating children in that way like only sort of like exacerbates the problem of why they're being a dick.
No, Spoon. This is my son. And then exponentially,
Lovely dog. That's a lovely dog.
Yeah, you're just okay. Exponentially, you're just fucking wrong. And the reason why is because oftentimes parents who are having issues at home, and I'm not blaming them or calling them shitty. What I am saying is that there's a lot of complicating factors where there's, basically there's drug abuse or whatever, and there's shitty problems at home, things that they can't control. You know who they can yell at without getting in trouble? Teachers and administrators.
And the kids sometimes.
And the kids. So they'll call the fucking school and they'll say, "Hey, stop! You guys are fucking shitbags. What'd you tell my fucking son? You called him a dick? Fuck you!" And the reason why they're doing that is because that maybe everything else isn't going so great, and that's one of their areas for catharsis.
Yeah, but the other side of it is
the other
side of that is that they'll take
beaten.
the catharsis out on the kid. And I gotta be honest with you, man. I'm not gonna be any more scared of any of my fucking teachers than my dad after dealing with that. So it's just,
And also what Connor's saying is true, because if usually in those situations everyone else in the world is judging them, so they take the teacher saying something to their child as another extension of judgment against them. So they're not going to see what the judgment is valid. They're just going to push back as someone else saying they call me a drunk and now you're calling me a bad parent.
How about
kids are good.
How about this?
Let them finish.
How about this? Right? You guys hate private schools. You guys hate school vouchers. You guys hate pretty much anything that your typical fucking centrist right winger might simply suggest. Because if it's anything,
school choice. I don't think so.
Counterpoints is a '90s Democrat, but anyway.
I'll take it.
Here we go. Since you didn't like any of my other ideas that are perfectly reasonable, how about this? How about we add some fucking mindfulness-based cognitive training to school curriculum?
It's so funny that you brought that up, because I literally just looked at something that was being tweeted out by somebody who I'm not going to say who, but they're a very famous advocate for this sort of thing. They were going crazy, saying it had CRT in it. Dug a little bit deeper. They eventually walk back, when you get to the PDF that has the material breakdown on it. It's saying that it has sex ed stuff. No, dude, they're complaining about the therapy stuff. And yes, it was CBT and CBD.
I'm not saying CBT, right? I'm saying mindfulness based, so MBCT.
Yeah, but,
right.
Okay, so whatever it is, but
MBCT is
yes.
Cognitive behavioral therapy has issues because it really only works super well for people that are average or above average intelligence, right? Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, way more successful in terms of just a general audience, right?
Either way, just
easier to teach.
Mental health education is fucking fine. That's okay.
You know what I'm saying? Can we agree on that? That maybe that'll help with some situations
it's being
of violence.
Pushed back against by the fucking people who are now advocating for school choice. So I just think it's funny.
Okay, can I extend an all? I just want to extend an olive branch to the people everywhere. Okay, so male I hate to be sexist about it, but I'm gonna be male mentorship as a positive thing versus like all the disciplinary shit that we're talking about, like the disciplinary deans. Like, what is it? It's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I think the disciplinary deans have to be there for the cure. But the prevention side of it is actually pretty much easier. And I always have this one anecdote. I had this one kid who was a super problem in the school that I worked at. I used to work as a school resource officer, and he was getting into fights every single fucking week. And all I did was I sat him down. I talked to him probably once a week. I sat with him at lunch, and we basically made a goal. And I said, if I was to get you some candy at the end of the year, and you promise not to fight, can we make that deal right now? What's your favorite candy? And then it was, I forget what it was, but it was like, it was something that I hated. It was like those malt balls that you get from like movie theaters and shit. And I was like, Whoppers. That's what it was. It was Whoppers. So we set 5 boxes. He got into 2 more fights. And at the end of the year, I got him 3 boxes of Whoppers. It cost me $3, and we dropped that kid's fighting rate by 90%. And all it took was a little bit of talking to, a positive goal, positive reinforcement, and consequences. And that's the thing. It's like, obviously we don't expect every school to be able to do this with every single kid, but that's obviously way better than getting the fucking dean to yoink every single kid out of class and fucking, beat their ass or whatever we're fucking memeing about right now. You know what I'm saying?
Well, everyone kind of already said dads on duty was like a terrible thing because
no, I asked if it was sustainable. I think it's a great idea. I just don't know if like 6 men can take like weekdays off indefinitely to make sure kids don't.
Well, no, it was 40 men and they were doing rotations.
Right, but that's still tough. If they asked me to do that right now, I wouldn't be able to do that because of
right. But it was 40
schedule.
men at like a school of like 1,000 people, right? Like obviously there was way more than 40 dads.
Sure, but like asking, like saying that across the nation, asking people to use their off day times, like to go be at school,
I don't know, to be involved in their kids' lives, like they
I think
probably
school should be like a self-sustaining environment. Like school should be able to handle stuff.
Nah, parents should be involved heavily because
parents should be parents at home.
Damn.
And I'm not even kind of jumping in. I'm just addressing that point. Like schools should be able to handle the issues of school. Like because everyone doesn't have proper parent situation. Like saying that like a requirement for a school to be successful is
nobody's saying that, right? We're just saying like how about funding and advocating for those types of programs to try and get more fathers into schools because it's showing a positive effect, right? Like it like community involvement is now bad because the state should just do it and we shouldn't let dads be around. Like if it's having a positive effect, we should fucking support it
as a solution to
Why? What?
We're not saying it's the only solution. We're just saying that maybe in addition to dealing with the problem at the tail end with the discipline, you try and prevent the problem from happening in the first place. But what Connor was just talking about, you make this structural issues with the system more accommodating to the groups who are having the disparate outcomes, because these kids that are getting disciplined, they're not doing as well in school, and as a result, they're not going to do as well in life. I shouldn't be able to predict the prison population of a fucking area by its graduation rates and SAT scores, but guess what? I can, and I can predict those by zip codes anyway. That's what we're saying.
I'm in favor of more positive male role models, but this person doesn't have to be your dad. Like if you want to speak to engagement, I'm saying you could do encouragement, increase the price we pay teachers, and do encouragement to get more men to go into teaching. I'm super in favor of that. Especially I talk about that issue specifically with black men because there's very few in school that as representation, but that's a different issue. I just think that
this is a predominantly black school that it started in with black.
I know exactly about the program. I've seen it. Like I said, I think it's cool, but I don't want that to be I don't think that should be the national solution. I think that schools should be able to handle themselves due to resources specifically given to those schools. It should be a school thing.
That's the problem is that there is never one solution. It's always a multitude of factors, right? And this is one way to tip the scales in a more positive direction.
The other issue is dads aren't trained. Every dad's not good. Yeah, dads aren't trained. Dads you don't know what one dad thinks is okay.
Alcoholic wife beater dad coming in.
I punch my son in the face.
I don't know. I mean, it's possible, but I don't know too many alcoholic wife beater dads. that like show up to volunteer to be
what?
super
No,
Oh,
it's
boy.
not.
with the fucking
no,
school
it's-
system.
But FLS, it's not even that. It's like a liability thing where somebody thinks they're doing the right thing, but then they end up fucking up super bad. So for instance, like a
No, I
gung-ho dad-
get that. Everyone gets
yeah,
that,
like-
but
yeah,
you've
like a
already pointed out
gung-ho-
yourself that that's a part of what led to the problem to begin with is a culture and a society that was so fucking litigious and so fucking concerned with that we've ended up pushing everything off to the police.
Sure. Okay. And I agree with you, but I think this thing can be dialed in, and I'm sympathetic to Bam. I don't know if you work in education or not, but basically, like, I don't think that we should be reliant on community involvement in order to do it. So, for instance, because that's disproportionately going to affect like poorer communities who don't have time to take off of work in order to fucking volunteer. So, like that's where I'm saying like it's an undue burden, and some of these things should like. I know you don't agree with me that these people, like descriptively, they're wards of the state, right? So if they're wards of the state, then we need to guarantee a base level of success to everybody. So that, but socialism is fucking cringe and Spoon, eat my butt. The fucking
You
solution to
just
the world
did. You
is
just did
not
class
socialism.
analysis.
That doesn't
You
make
just did a class analysis. And had
I don't- everything's not socialism.
class analysis.
Spectre.
But
Spectre,
decommodifying
Spectre,
basic human needs
I
is not the
constantly-
fucking solution.
That's the
Every
problem.
time
I
Everything that does that is Marxism. Yes, that's what we've been saying.
Spectre,
Oh my
Spectre.
god.
doing anything
Spectre.
isn't socialism. Like when the
Spectre,
socialism
I'm-
isn't
I'm-
when the
That's my
government does
point.
anything.
That's my point. Is this is all I was advocating for, and I was told that it was fucking communist USSR.
No,
Just
no,
really
no, no, no.
interesting.
No, he's
Okay.
talking
Now
about
that's-
the housing shit you guys were talking about, right?
Yeah.
I'm a fucking
Dude, what did I-
ANCAP and I still use Marxist analysis.
I
It was
literally
Spoon.
said. I
It was Spoon.
literally
It wasn't
said.
you.
Okay.
It wasn't you. It was Spoon. Spoon triggered the fuck out of me. He was like,
Like-
"Hey, you know what would be good here? Some
I was-
socialism."
I was talking zoning laws. Like, yeah, I think that you didn't really have anything like substantive to say against like the MMT Randall Ray stuff, but I think that there are people who have, and like I want to hear their arguments eventually. But yeah, like I mean, I was just basically saying like fucking zoning laws. It wasn't communism, bro.
All
God,
right.
I was so big mad that
Maybe
Marx had
communism.
shitty things to say about capitalism 150 years ago, huh?
Well, those were all correct. The criticism is right, just not the prescription. Anyway.
There you go.
That's why Das Capital 1 and 3 fucking contradictory. Like, dude, like
Oh,
you
boy.
get out of here.
They were
pretty much written
marginal
by
revolution occurred.
One's in
Get
micro,
over
one's
it.
in macro, one's in micro, one's in macro. It's really easy to understand.
It's almost like they
It's-
were written
it's
by
not.
different
It's-
people too, or something. At some parts.
Connor.
Ingalls. Shh. No, sorry. Marginal revolution occurred. All right, just get over it.
We're not
Okay,
gonna,
all right,
it's gonna
okay,
get
all right.
so boring. This is so
I'm-
boring.
I'm advocating for socialism based on the wealth of nations
Sure.
anyway, okay? Like fucking Adam Smith was the first great socialist. So there you go.
True.
Labor theory of values cringe as fuck from people that don't understand economics.
Okay, all right. Well, you know what? You can have specifically a debate about that. In fact, Revolt and Scott, I feel like you guys would have a very stirring debate, one that would be very extremely difficult to control, but like a very stirring debate. So we're open to that. If you guys want to do a 1v1 on this channel, I would love to make that happen.
He already advocated killing me several times. I'm good.
No,
It
no,
was in Kapistan.
In his fucking theoretical world, it is definitely beneficial to immediately start killing as many people as
Oh yeah, definitely.